Repossessions are up, jobs are down, and the credit markets are flat as a pancake. But if you think things in the West are bad, try stepping into the developing world, which is really starting to feel the effects of the recession. Places like Africa have become the forgotten victims of the economic downturn. The World Bank has warned that 53 million more people could be trapped in poverty, earning less than $2 a day. It predicts a rise in the infant mortality rate, with 200,000 to 400,000 more babies dying each year. And it says private sector capital flows from the developed to the developing world are expected to drop to half the level they were in 2007. That's a reduction of $500 billion.
If you look, for example, in Southeast Asia, a lot of people are working in factories producing clothes for export. Those exports are in decline. You've had massive hits on manufacturing exports in that region. I've just come back from Zambia. Zambia is very dependent on copper exports. Copper prices are a third of what they were a year ago, and people are being laid off en masse in South Africa and in Zambia. So big commodity exporters, big garment exporters, they're all taking hits from different places.
Take, for example, the Democratic Republic of Congo, home of Primus beer and a burgeoning minerals industry. But almost 250,000 jobs have been lost here because of a collapse in mineral prices caused by the global recession. The mines are based in one province, upon which half of Congo's national income is dependent. At a G7 meeting in Italy earlier this month, the wealthiest nations were asked to set up a vulnerability fund to set aside 0.7% of their economic stimulus packages for the developing world. The trouble is, none of them have met that target so far, and only Britain has committed itself to it. But while credit has dried up pretty much everywhere else, one sector appears to be booming: microfinance. The extension of small, low-interest loans to the world's poorest people, like these carpenters in Bangladesh. Microfinance is an industry worth in excess of $25 billion, according to one estimate, and it's been growing since the 1970s.
We're actually seeing that the need for microcredit services in developing countries is as great as ever. There are 2.7 billion people who live on less than $2 a day. They don't have access to mainstream financial services. So what we're doing is we're investing in the organizations in developing countries that are reaching out to those people. We've just raised 25 million euros in the last couple of weeks alone for a new fund that we're launching to invest in these organizations.
In fact, the microfinance model is now spreading from the developing world to us.
More and more people are starting to ask questions about who has my money, what are they doing with it, what is the bank doing with it? And so I think the impact that we're going to see is more and more organizations going back to basics and engaging in relationship banking, ensuring that they were lending to real people for real needs. And that is what sustainable banking is all about.
Think of it as old-fashioned back-to-basics banking, as appealing to the financially shell-shocked developed world as to the poverty-stricken developing world.
Well, I'm joined now by the banker to the poor, as he's been called, the Nobel Peace Prize winner and the pioneer of microcredit, Professor Muhammad Yunus, and by the economist Dr. Dambisa Moyo, who's author of Dead Aid. Professor Yunus, first of all, I think people will be amazed by this. You know, we know our problems. Why is microcredit doing so well?
Oh, for one thing, we're very close to the real economy. One of the problems with the economic crisis, the financial crisis, because the financial system got delinked from the real economy, it became a paper chaser and a kind of speculative and sort of gambling along the way. So we are still based very much in a personal relationship, in the real economy, and it helps people to change their own life. And they understand the value of it, so they honor it, they return the money. You mentioned that it works in third world countries like Bangladesh. It also works in New York City. We started a program in New York City last year in January. Exactly what we do in Bangladesh, we are doing it in New York City. Today we have more than 500 borrowers in that program, all women. Nearly 100% repayment, it's 99.6% repayment rate. And while the big banks are collapsing in the same city, this one is moving on.
No, I was going to say, it sounds like old-fashioned banking. Know your market, know the people you lend to. It sounds like kind of common sense. Dr. Moyo, we heard some of the difficulties in Africa there. Is microcredit, microfinancing, is that working there?
It is working there. It's not to the extent that many of us would like to see it there. I think it's certainly there's a big opportunity to step in where the traditional forms of financing have failed or have not actually bridged the gap of the demand for those products. Some of the work that Professor Yunus has done in Bangladesh is being replicated, but as I said, I think there's much more scope for it to be much more extensive across the continent.
Well, one of the things that we didn't get onto there is where does the original money come from? Because as part of the problem in the Western banks, that the machinery's kind of dried up, and we're trying to put oil in it. Where does the original money come from?
Entire Grameen banking is done in a very local basis. We have right now 7.7 million borrowers. We lend out over $100 million a month. It's over $1 billion a year. And all this money comes from the locality. We have 2,600 branches. Each branch is supposed to mobilize its own deposits and lend the money to the local people. So it's a local money, local people. We are not linked to the international finance system. We have no shortage of money. So we don't
get many people on this program who say that these days.
Yeah.
I mean, what's fascinating is one of the prejudices about the poor or developing countries is it's a sink for money. You won't get your money back. And one of the interesting things about this is you do.
Absolutely.
Why?
Because at the end of the day, people are looking for opportunities to invest and to generate an income. And I think what we've seen over the years is that when you give something for free in the form of aid, for example, there's a tendency for it not to work because there is no penalty, there is no responsibility on the borrower to return it. But in the context of Professor Yunus's programs and programs like it across the African continent, for example, there is an incentive to actually borrow and return so that you can continue to generate an income.
This is very interesting stuff. I know your book is Dead Aid. I mean, are you suggesting that aid is somehow kind of dead hand on some economies in Africa because it distorts the economy, because it seems to be money for nothing, but it changes normal economic activity?
Well, absolutely. I think that looking across over 60 years of the large aid packages going to Africa, of my estimate, over $1 trillion of aid has gone to Africa, and the results have been pretty poor. In terms of comparison, a very odd comparison with what Professor Yunus is talking about, we've seen enormous default over the 60 years at the government level, very poor performance, growth has declined over the 60 years, and poverty has increased. These are not the statistics that Professor Yunus is talking about.
I think it's fascinating that if you want to get your money back, you lend to somebody who hasn't got much money. If you don't want to get your money back, you give it to a government. But I mean,
in the context of this financial crisis, these are very important aspects. You have a dysfunctional foreign aid system, dysfunctional multilateral agencies giving loans, giving money to countries like in Africa, and dysfunctional financial system. But we are worrying about the crisis, which is a very important thing, how to get back. Get back to what? The same old system, do the same old thing?
Right, well, I mean, are you both saying there's an
opportunity?
There is an opportunity.
This
That's
is
what I was
the
going to
greatest
ask you.
opportunity. This is the greatest opportunity to redesign, to rebuild. We're not talking about that. How to rebuild the whole financial system, a financial system which has ignored 2/3 of the world population, should not be the one we should go back to. We should be becoming an inclusive financial system so that nobody is denied from this financial system.
So do you see an opportunity for Africa in these terrible difficulties?
Definitely.
You
this
see
is
an
opportunity to innovate. And it's a tragic way for African governments to be forced to innovate, but it's an opportunity to innovate all the same. And because we've seen such poor results from the traditional model, the state models of aid dependency, this is a fantastic opportunity to essentially replicate what has been successful in other regions of the world, developing regions of the world, which have actually not depended on aid to the extent that Africa has.
Dr. Moyo, Professor Yunus, thank you both very much.
Thank you.